Ojapat, thank you for making time.
Thank you.
So on the 1st of September, there was a deadline with regards to cut flowers that were being exported to Australia and the pest regulation. Now, the regulation required that Kenya to fumigate its produce at least 18 hours before they're exported to Australia. Previously, we understand they were being dipped in Australia before they're released into the market. If you could briefly bring the viewer up to speed, what was the rationale behind the new regulations by Australia?
The reason why the regulation was changed by the Australian authorities is because we have certain pests that we have in this country that are not in Australia. And for that reason, they are considered as quarantine pests. And because they are considered quarantine pests, every country would like to protect their territories. And Australia being an island, it was necessary that the regulation changes. Before we had the regulation, we used to do our fumigation. Our flowers used to be fumigated at the point of entry and not at the point of exit. So what Australians did to just ensure that they mitigate the risk of having the pests into their country, they did ask us to then fumigate at the point of exit from Kenya so that they get to Australia pest-free.
Now, the regulation came to pass on the 1st of September 2019. We are almost 6 months in. But I want to know, what are some of the options that flower farmers and flower producers had in order to comply with this new regulation? What were the avenues that they could pursue to produce pest-free flowers at the point of entry in Australia?
Number one option that was given is that we use what we call a system approach, where during production, we will produce and ensure that the flowers get zero pest at the point they get into Australia. That has worked, and that has not worked in other areas, considering we're in the tropics and the pests we discussed are here. Two, they have asked us to do a post harvest treatment. The post harvest treatment here means that we can use any treatment that is approved by our country. The NPPO here, the National Protection Organization, a Plant Protection Organization, which in this case is KEFIS, approve a protocol that ensures that there's zero pest entry into Australia. Number three, they have said we could use a multiple approach, both the system and the post-harvest treatment. In this case, the post-harvest treatment that is good is fumigation, that then guarantees zero pest entry into Australian authorities. That is what needs to be done. Unfortunately, we as a country have moved slow. Our speed has been very slow. One, in approving a protocol by a country. The second, ensuring that we have a pest-free zone, which is not practical to set a pest-free zone based on the tropics. We are therefore now doing a bit of some fumigation that is ongoing, but in a very small scale, even though we have an improved compliance rates, but we have decreased volumes of entry into Australia. One, because of coronavirus, because of the cessation of movement, and two, we have not been able to put together a national fumigation facility as we talk. So we working together with the stakeholders. Basically, is that the PIPCPB, which is the Pest Control Products Board, and KEFIS need to approve a protocol that the country can adopt. This is therefore not possible now as we talk. It has not been approved. The discussions are still ongoing. We hope that sooner or later, this should be able to be sorted out for us to be able to enjoy the facility, enjoy the market again.
If you could just give us a brief overview, what would the protocol entail, or how would it look like?
What happens with the protocol here is very simple, that you harvest your products from the farm, and you get them into a fumigation chamber. From what we saw in Australia when we visited last year, a fumigation chamber will last about two hours. After 2 hours, we remove the products from the fumigation chamber, and you put this into a cooling facility, you pre-cool them, and then load. The challenge we are facing at the moment is that we will fumigate at a temperature of about 12 plus. So we need to quickly bring that temperature down to below 4% for us to be able to guarantee safety and the quality of the state products into Australia, considering the 24-hour, almost 24 hours, between 21 and 24 hours that our flowers take before they get there. We have a few options that we could use. Some of them will ensure that our flowers have to be taken through a long high temperature, and it depreciates the quality of the flowers or the leaves before it gets into Australia. But we also have a system like a treatment for phosphine gas. If we will successfully manage to work on this, it means then that we will get our flowers into a fumigation chamber for at least 18 hours, between 12 to 18 hours, for us to be able then to push them out. The beauty with this is that we will not have challenges in terms of temperatures because the fumigant will work within the acceptable temperature. As unfortunately, as we talk, we do not have enough fumigation facilities. Neither do we have a chamber that can accommodate so much stems into a fumigation chamber to be able to sustain considerable amount of a cargo into Australia. So what we're doing at the moment is to discuss with government to fast track the approval of certain fumigation facilities and fumigation protocols that will allow us to be able to turn around the volumes that are sustainable to be able to sustain an air freight going into Australia, considering that we also have a transit either through Doha or through Dubai, or sometimes we have freighters that are flying straight into Australia. But this depends on the volumes that we can be able to fumigate to assure our trading partners of zero pest entry into their country. What we saw in Australia is a very simple chamber, actually a container, just like the containers we use for transporting cargo from Mombasa into Nairobi or into Kampala. Tweak it in such a way that we can be able to get in a fumigant inside, close it, monitor the temperatures, release, put it in a cooling facility, and leave. The challenge we are having is not the fumigation chamber. The challenge we are having is able to approve any protocol for us to use because the private sector is willing to invest. But how do they invest into a chamber and then the government does not approve? We do not have a protocol. So what we need to do quickly is to ensure that a protocol is developed quickly, that the growers and the exporters can quickly adopt. And anybody who comes in a fumigation chamber and wants to put that facility in will be required to follow that protocol. But as we talk at the moment, the private sector is working on the protocols that they have developed by themselves that needs to be approved by government.
Finally, Ojapat, as we wind up, you said the protocol has not yet been approved. That means we might not be exporting flowers to Australia. At what cost does this come out?
We are exporting flowers into Australia, but we are exporting few flowers into Australia. We are less than a half of the consignments we were sending as late as December last year. January, February, when Corona now hit, we have less than 50% of the consignment going into it. Luckily, we could attribute this to Corona because of the movement, restrictions of the movement in the airspace. But unfortunately, if we cannot send flowers into Australia, our competitors like Colombia will take advantage of the same. So we are currently below at about 50% of our shipments into Australia attributed to Corona. But you and I know that we have a bigger challenge that we need to deal, which is the fumigation protocol, which we need to quickly fast track so that as the airspace opens, we will be able to access that market quickly and be able to possess, first of all, to possess and retain the market share that we have and be able to get more market. If not, we will lose it to our competitors because we have an opportunity of not just flowers. We now have inquiries of fruits. We have inquiries of nuts from the same market. It's only important that we quickly close in this to be able to get this happening. So my appeal is that let's work together as a country and ensure that the protocols are approved and ensure that we regain our market.
But that's why we leave it. Thank you for making time.
Thank you so much for having me, and we look forward to engaging further, and we'll keep updating you on the happenings.